What is up, internet? Today we are talking about the all-new Commencal Meta SX V5 in the race build. Yeah, so let's jump right in. I was able to borrow this Meta SX for, I don't know, it's probably been about 6-7 weeks now, a good while. It's late season for us here in Colorado, so the snow's starting to fall. We have to get a little more picky with our riding days, but I've been able to get a lot of miles in on it and I have some thoughts. So this is the SX V5 as stated in the race build. So that gets you an aluminum frame like all Commencal bikes, a RockShox Zeb Ultimate, the RockShox Super Deluxe air can in the rear, Crank Brothers Synthesis alloy wheel set, and a GX group with TRP DHR Evo brakes. Overall, we'll just kind of chat about the kit real quick. I think it's pretty close to perfect. You know, this is a big, aggressive bike, and it's a fast bike that I've learned asks a lot of you. Everything I threw at this bike was just like, let's do more. Let's go harder, let's go faster. And I was a little surprised that they didn't spec double down tires on this one. So this one is spec'd with Exo Plus tires, which is fine. I just know long-term, if I was to buy this bike, I would quickly swap out for the more durable sidewall and casing because I know just what this bike's capable of, the speed it's capable of, and the type of terrain it thrives in really kind of begs a lot from you. And yeah, I didn't really understand that spec choice. Maybe it has something to do with achieving a certain weight at the end of the day, because believe it or not, Commencal has surprised me once again. This bike is 34.36 pounds. As some of you know, my daily driver right now is a Santa Cruz Nomad V6 with carbon wheels, and that bike is over 36 pounds. This all metal Commencal that costs a lot less than my Santa Cruz is lighter, and that surprised me. I thought, you know, my buddy was on the old big bike of theirs, and I think he was clocking in around 37 pounds, which wasn't a surprise. So to come in under 35 was kind of a surprise. That's the first thing. The second thing I would change is I'd probably go for a slightly longer dropper. As you can see, I've got kind of a lot of seat posts showing underneath, and yeah, I'd probably go for a little bit longer dropper. But other than that, the GX drivetrain, the GX Eagle stuff is no fuss. It's cheap to replace. You can find parts everywhere. The TRP DHR Evos, in my opinion, are the best brakes on the market right now. They have incredible modulation and power, and they really don't heat up as much as other brakes in my experience. They've got really thick 2.3 mil wide rotors that really help with the heat. The other note on this kit, RockShox isn't my preferred suspension, but something, I don't know, the tune with this Super Deluxe on the back is just beautiful. I don't know, if I bought this bike, I probably would go with this kit over the more expensive one with the Fox stuff on it, just because I liked how well this Super Deluxe rode on this frame. It was incredibly smooth, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the descending. But yeah, parts wise, good to go. Not much I'd change. Again, just probably tires and maybe a longer dropper. That's about it. And I, of course, switch out the grips. I just like these grips. Not many people are putting meaty paws on bikes out of the factory. They're a little bit wide. So I understand that. Geometry. It's actually really good I was on this because I've been riding the Nomad so much lately. This geometry is actually very similar to the Nomad. And I'll compare those bikes later in the video, but they don't really ride the same, which I thought was interesting. I didn't look at the geometry of this bike until I was done testing it and done kind of like taking down my notes and how it rides and everything. And I was surprised to read that the geometry is almost identical to my Nomad, except for the stack was pretty different. So it's got a 77.4 degree seat tube angle. It almost looks steeper than it is because of how much sticks up from the top tube. It gives it this illusion that it's like maybe 78 plus degrees, but it's 77.4, which is barely slacker than the Nomad. It's got a 64 degree head tube angle, a 1302 wheelbase. That was probably my biggest surprise. I thought this bike was a lot longer than it was when riding it. And that was kind of a good thing. I really got along with this bike at high speed, and we'll talk about that. It's got a 447 mil chainstay in large and XL. And I think the small and medium come about 5 mil shorter. So kind of like Commencal's other new bikes, there's somewhat size specific for small and medium, and then large and XL get the slightly larger version. It's got a 647 mil stack. This is probably the biggest difference in geometry between this bike and the Nomad, and a 500 mil reach, which is just, for me at 6'1", I like most extra large bikes. As they start to creep above 500, they start to feel a little bit long for me, and that's when I start thinking about looking at the large offering. This one is really a split decision for me. I'd probably still go XL, but during the climbs I felt a little bit stretched out, and probably would have gotten along better with a large in some situations. So yeah, with that, I will jump into the climbing. You know, it's a big bike, right? 170 up front, 160 rear. I might have to check that actually, but I believe 160, 165 rear, 170 up front, and it's soft. It's not, and that was a big surprise for me because again, I'm coming off the Meta V5. I was on the Tempo earlier this year as well. And those bikes have this really progressive, sporty, poppy, sit high in their travel kind of feel. And I thought this was, again, just gonna be a bigger version of that, and it's not. It's a much softer tune, a much smoother tune, and you just kind of, the geometry is a little bit too big to fail. The seat tube angle has you upright and forward. The lower stack on this one has that weight on the front wheel. It never really felt like it wandered too much. The only place, and this is why I thought the wheelbase was longer than it was, something in this magic here feels long in kind of tight switchbacks or slow technical maneuvers. So anytime I was climbing something tech and had to make it like a quick, poppy, just kind of high energy move, it felt a little longer and a little clumsier than my Nomad, which again shares very similar geometry. And I don't really know what that is. Maybe it's the softer suspension, maybe there's a little bit more flex, but all of that kind of pays dividends on the downhill, which we'll talk about now. Downhill is incredible on this bike. It's maybe not as lively or energetic or willing to jump as some bikes, but if fast means fun for you, this is the bike. If you need a bike that you can take kind of as an everyday driver, but also go race really technical and demanding enduro stages, this is the bike for you. Go to the park and hit the more technical runs and the jump lines, great option. It feels like a bigger bike than I think a lot of bikes in its category. I think before this, the bar for me was that nuke-proof Mega 29C. That bike was really smooth, really fast, and also agile. And to me, when I thought back, like if I wanted to get king of mountain on a hill, I'd probably go for the nuke-proof. If speed was my #1 goal, I'll go for the nuke-proof. That's no longer the case. If that's my #1 goal, I'm picking this bike up. Like if I'm going racing in 2024, I'd probably race on this bike. It's just so composed. There's a trail over here called Longhorn at White Ranch Open Space here in Golden, Colorado. And a lot of it, it's hard to set your suspension up for because a lot of it's holes. You know, it's easy to set up compression tunes and rebounds for the bumps on the trail, but whenever there's big kind of voids, it just gets rough and works, it just really wears you out. This is one of the first bikes that just made it seem like a small trail. It just made everything feel really smooth, really fast, and I didn't feel nearly as exhausted as I do on other bikes. And I've ridden this trail probably over 100 times, and it smoothed it out like it was nothing. And that's really what this bike does best. There was a spot, there's like a little slow technical rock popover that I stalled out on this bike. I don't think it's great at really slow technical moves. Something about it starts to feel really long and kind of soft, and it doesn't give you that little extra pop. Now, of course, you're gonna adjust to whatever bike you're riding a lot. I've got probably about 10 hours on this bike, and I'm sure if I kept riding it, I would adjust and it wouldn't be an issue, but just off the shelf, going out for a ride, getting used to it, it does feel a little bit long and sluggish and slow tech. So something I usually pop over pretty often here, I kind of got stalled out, fell off the rock, and actually scratched the stanchion. So sorry, Commencal, about that. I will compare this a little bit to the Nomad. The Nomad is definitely more nimble. And again, it's crazy. The numbers are so similar, except for that stack on the Nomad's quite a bit higher. So it's got you a little more upright. The Nomad's also heavier, which was a surprise. This bike came in, again, my Nomad carbon with carbon wheels is over 36 pounds, but that weight, I don't really feel it on the Nomad. It still feels like a little bit more nimble. And on the climbs, I don't really notice. They're both about the same. This is probably a hair behind the Nomad on climbing, but they're pretty much the same. Again, the SX is far smoother, and I think probably the faster of the two bikes, and just a little bit more clumsy in the slow maneuvers. I'll also compare this to the Meta V5 non-SX because I was on that bike very recently. And again, that bike is just really poppy, really fun, more of an all-rounder. And I think it just can be set up to be like the one bike that you have, and you know, maybe not the bike that you're racing though. So if you're not racing, you just kind of want like a general all-around, all-mountain bike, I think the V5 is probably a better option. But if going as fast as you possibly can is the goal, probably go with this guy right here. And I don't think I found the limits. I'm not sure I'm worthy of this bike. It wants to go. I found myself coming into corners way faster than I could get ready for and adjust for, and I was grabbing a handful of brakes and kind of skidding out because I just didn't realize how fast I was going. So I don't know, I'd like to spend more time on it and just kind of see where it would take my riding, just because it is so capable. But it's been a while since I was on a bike where I was like, man, I just don't know where the limits are, and I don't know if I'm willing to push the limits to where this bike can go. So who's it for? I think I said it. You know, it's for somebody who, if you think fast equals fun, this is the bike. If you just don't really mind not having the bike that's extremely poppy and playful, and you're just looking to kind of keep two wheels on the ground and go Mach 6, this is gonna do it for you. It's also a really good value. I think this build kit is really thought out pretty well with the higher, you know, this is the higher, it's the Zeb Ultimate and the Super Deluxe Air. So you get the perfect like combination of really nice suspension and kind of a budget-friendly drivetrain. To me, drivetrains, like, as long as it works well, that's not where I'm putting my money. I want my money in wheels, suspension, tires, brakes, kind of the stuff that, I don't know, controls the bike a little bit more than just shifting. So I think it's smart to kind of save a little on the drivetrain and invest elsewhere, and it seems like Commencal shares that value as well. I think they've kind of done a great job at offering something that rides really different than their V5. And you know, the V5 and the Tempo, all really great bikes. I've had a chance to ride them all this year. I'd say, I'll finish with this thought. If I had to pick one out of all of those bikes, I'm kind of personally eyeing the V5 All-Ins build right now, because I have this feeling and I need to ride one. But if that coil setup kind of calms down the riding a little bit and gives me a little bit more on the high speed sections, I think that could be the perfect quiver killer. Otherwise, this is my pick. And just because it made me ask those questions of like, how fast can we go? And kind of pushed me and scared me in a way that, I don't know, man. I don't think I've ridden segments of these trails in the Front Range as fast as I did on this bike. So cheers to Commencal for building this machine. And this was really quiet. I know some other reviewers were saying that they got a lot of creaks out of the suspension. Again, I've got about 10 hours on it, and none of the linkage has creaked on me. Colorado has really, really fine, dusty kind of soil, and I didn't wash it. It's been kind of cold. My hose is not connected at my house, so I haven't washed this bike, and it's gotten kind of into everything, and I'm not getting all the creaking that some people are talking about. And then one other thing I wanted to check, and mind you, this is an XL. I had some people asking if I had any issues rubbing the water bottle with the shock. So I'll just go ahead and demonstrate here. I never noticed it. I don't think these things touch, but I've also not checked yet. So I'll just do this for the first time here. Go ahead and just deflate the shock and see if we touch that water bottle. This water bottle is a pretty standard, I think 22 or 24 ounce water bottle by Purist, which is that brand Specialized owns, and they do most water bottles for most companies. So let's go ahead and air down. Yeah, I don't think the shock moves in a way that it is going to mess with the water bottle. But again, this is an extra large. I can't speak for a large, medium, or small, but all right, full compression. Actually, at full compression, it does move down towards the water bottle a little bit. And I don't know if you can see this. I hope you can. We've probably got like 2 mil between the water bottle and the reservoir right here. So it's not touching. I could see on a smaller frame that might touch, but on this XL, it's not. So yeah, thanks again, Commencal, for letting me ride this guy. Sorry guys, I'm a little sick. If I sound nasally, it's been a hell of a start to winter with all the sickness coming home from daycare this year. But if you have any questions about this bike or how it rides or anything that I missed or anything that you're curious about, drop it down in the comments. And yeah, look forward to hearing from you. Thanks again. Please click like, subscribe, smash that like button, all that stuff. It really helps. And I hope to bring you some more bike reviews soon here. Thanks.